delighted to have you here with us today, Dada. Thank you so much for saying yes.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And you look gorgeous as always. So,
thank you. So do you, Jane.
Thank you. I think, Dada, you're somebody who is just like Chantal. I was saying to Chantal before we started that she changes her hairstyle so often. It's good that she has photos that have different hairstyles on, so we can always recognize her. Can see she's laughing. So I think you are the same for me, Dada. It's hard to keep up. All of them.
This one is going to stay for quite a while, so.
Okay, we're safe. But we're interested in interviewing you today, not because of your hairstyle, but because you are someone who I think would be considered for many people as top talent. And I know when I said that to you before, you were like, what? But yes, you are that. And I think it's so interesting for companies to find out a little bit more from a candidate's perspective about what is attractive in their recruitment process or not. And not that we're saying you're a candidate at the moment. I know before this,
yeah,
we had this conversation that you're not actually on the job market at the moment.
No, I'm not.
So the purpose of this interview is not to help you find something new, but just to really reflect back on your experiences with the different companies where you've been employed, and not to necessarily mention names either, but to pick out what was attractive for you, what made you think, oh, I want to join this organization, and what made you think, oh, not so sure, don't really feel comfortable with them. So before we start, I think I know most of you on this call, but I'll introduce myself. I'm Jane Moores from Out of Box Thinking, and my absolute passion is interviewing. So I've taken it not just from interviewing candidates or training companies on how to interview and hire the right people, but my delight is our monthly webinar where I get to interview interesting people. And some of you on this call, you've been in one of those interviews before. And just find out more about how people think and what can inform our thinking as we are looking to attract people and build organizations. We know right from McKinsey's article in 2001 around the war for talent that organizations realize the companies that are going to thrive in the future are those with the best people. And so evolved this war for talent. And we know that during COVID, more candidates entered the market. But there's still a very strong position that people hold when they have a scarce skill. And I know, Dada, in your role, as you've got a few titles there, there's data analyst, right? Data scientist and programmer, all very impressive, none of which I'm very good at, but very, very much sought after skills and will be even more so in the new world of work. So before we go in, let me just ask you, Dada Wele, how does it feel to be considered top talent?
Wow, it's very humbling. I've never, ever considered myself top talent. I've just always thought, okay, I've got these skills, I've got this skill set, and I'm not really top talent. So it's very, very humbling. I would actually like to know why I would be, considered as top talent.
Oh, really? Okay. Well, I can see in the chat box already. Yolanda says, we are here to headhunt Dada. So I'm not the only one who considers you top talent. But Dada, I think firstly your skills, as we mentioned, there's more and more of our world is focused around data analytics and data science. And those are areas in organizations that people really want to build up. They really inform the direction where companies are marketing and where they're growing, your programming skills. And then let's just be open and honest. I think, we're friends enough and we talk openly enough about this. But in our South African market, you are a Black female. And those are the most sought after profiles, if you like, from an employment equity perspective. And if we're going to be, I know a lot of my training is about not being biased, but we still hear a lot of people out there who are biased against certain things. And one of them is age. And nobody can be biased towards you against your age either, because you're not too young and you're not too old. You're at that perfect employable age. So you've got all of those factors on your side. And I think I just appreciate the fact that you say it's humbling, because I think that adds to it. Because people today don't just want the technical skills, they want the people skills. And they want people who are humble, and they want people who aren't arrogant because of what they have. So if we're going to look a little bit into your career history, and I know I shared some of it on LinkedIn today, maybe you can just highlight for us, what are the pieces in your career journey as you've been building your career that really stood out for you as experiences that were attractive, that made you want to join organizations?
I think the first thing that I do when when I'm out as a candidate in the market is do a lot of research in the type of companies that I want to work for. You hear from other people in terms of what type of company, certain companies are. And I do a lot of research in that. And also the people that I've worked for, the managers. I think managers make such a big difference, play such a significant role in companies. And I've had great managers in my career journey. I've had not so great managers, but I've had really great, like the first manager that I had at Vodacom. He was such an amazing manager. He saw something in me that I didn't even know was there. And he ignited that fire. He invested in me. He had a folder, that had my name on it. So every Friday I'd go into his office and he'd open this folder and we'd talk through, what is it that you want to do? What do you need in order to get there? He didn't spoon feed me. He really, he exposed me, he pushed me, over the edge. There were times when I was like, oh my goodness, this is so hard. But looking back, it all benefited me so much. And I was the only female in that team, and it was such an amazing experience. So I'll say what attracts me is the type of company it is, the value system of that company, and the people in that company, and hearing from other people, in terms of other people's opinions about that company. So I think companies don't know, or managers don't know, that candidates speak about them to other people.
Yes.
And the brand is very important.
Yes, absolutely. Not everyone in your family knows you're in a webinar, Nandi. I think what you're saying is so key, and people who are in recruitment and hiring, I think, are often trying to inform hiring managers and say, it matters how you treat someone in an interview.
It really
because
matters.
as you say, word on the street, it matters how you manage people, because a lot of candidates judge an organization by what everyone else says. And that's where social media comes into play.
Yes.
I know Elzette will agree with that. She's very, very strong in social media, many talents in the recruitment marketing space. So I love what you say about that. I love what you say about managers, because I think a lot of recruiters get a bit of pushback from organizations saying, oh, this isn't the right person. But what they don't always think about is, what was the environment this person came into? How am I managing them? That has an impact on retention. But you mentioned,
can pick up those.
Tell me.
And you can pick up those things during the interview stage already, when you walk into the interview, and how you engage those people, the different things. I'm sure we're going to get into them. You can already pick up some of those things during the interview.
Yes, exactly. So I would love to know more about that. You mentioned picking those things up in the interview, and you mentioned a company's values. How have you seen those when you're in an interview or in a recruitment process?
I mean, one of the things that is sort of a trigger or a red flag for me is when you invite me for an interview, and you don't even, as an organization or a recruiter, you don't even care to ask, if this works if the time works for me. That for me says, you don't take, my needs into consideration. You're not cognizant of who I am as an individual, the fact that I'm a mother, the fact that I'm a wife, and I've actually got a job at the moment, and I need to deliver in my current job, even though I'm in the market. And in the interview, in working as a Black woman, into an interview that has one race, be it, even if it's just Black, for me is a problem. One race, white, age, older instead of younger. That's very I walked into an interview. It's a family-owned business, and it was only older white, a panel of older white, individuals. And I found that very jarring, because that meant I asked myself, am I going to be the first person of color in this company? Is transforming this company, or the journey of transformation going to start with me? Which is a very, very difficult thing. And I don't think people understand that, employment equity is important. I value it, but it comes with such pressure, because you walk into a job and people think you've only been hired because you're Black, and you have to prove that I'm not hired because I'm Black. I've actually got the skill. So if I'm going to be the only Black person, that's a very, very difficult thing. So that for me is a red flag. That the lack of diversity is a red flag. The lack of consideration or cognizance of my time. I mean, I even said the amount of assessments that one needs to do upfront before the actual interview. The amount of time, no one has time to spend 4 hours doing an assessment. I've got a job that I need to attend to. I've got a family. Yes, I understand that companies need to assess whether I'm the right candidate, but surely there's a different way of doing this. Instead of making me spend 4 hours and then I must still go out for an interview.
Yeah.
I said a lot today.
No, I love what you're saying, because I think what we're able to do when we hear you is focus on the candidate experience. Because from the company side, they might feel like we're doing such a good job of being thorough in our assessment process. We've got interviews, we've got assessments, we've got this, we've got that. And you're saying from the candidate's perspective, we appreciate that you want to be thorough, but especially if I'm going for a few interviews, there's only so many days leave that I can take. Exactly. And I think from their side as well, they might be feeling, wow, we're doing a great job. We're really trying to become more diverse. So we want to hire someone Black. But you're saying, for example, if it is Black going into an organization that is only mostly white or mostly colored or mostly, you're saying it's also uncomfortable to feel like you are the first one.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, again, don't mention any names, but have you ever had that experience where you feel like, I have literally just been hired because of my color, or because I'm female, or,
Yes, I did. I have had that experience, and I didn't stay very long in that organization. And I know for other people will feel like, but that's okay, you should have just stayed. And for me I want to walk away at the end of the day feeling like I've achieved something in that day. I want to have job satisfaction. When I earn my salary, I want to know that I've put in the work to earn this amount of money. So I was earning a great salary, and I thought, but I sat and I thought, I will not have any experience to justify this amount of money that I'm earning. So I thought, this is just not working. It's not working for myself. I don't have any job satisfaction. It might be working for the company in terms of they've achieved or are on their way of achieving their EE targets. But in terms of my career development, of my values and my work ethic, this is just not working.
Yeah, I love what you're saying.
That's when I sent up my resignation.
Yeah, I think sometimes employers can feel, but why is this person not happy? I mean, we're paying them a lot. And something we've seen more and more, especially over COVID, is that people are not primarily motivated, all of them, by money. Meaning and purpose have become much more important. And people have become much more cognizant that life is short. I want to do something meaningful with it.
Definitely.
I like a comment that Yolanda has made in the chat box, that interviewing is a two-way street. And I'm wondering whether that's something that has ever popped up in an interview for you where you felt like, okay, this is a two-way street or it isn't a two-way street, and how that's influenced your assessment of a company?
There's a company that I worked for, and when I went to the interview, there was panel was there, but as part of the panel, they had a union representative who was simply there to just observe and monitor the process, whether the process is fair, are they sticking to, the diversity policies that they have as a company. And just the rapport, and then, the people that were interviewed were just amazing. They were accommodating of me, understand, and I was even late. I was even late. I had been stuck in traffic, and they were understanding even of that. And I'm not saying people should be late for interviews, but life happens, but they were understanding even of that. But having that union representative for me said, we're serious about diversity. We're serious about transformation. We're a company that values transformation, that values diversity. And when I actually accepted the job offer and joined the company, I could see that. I could see they lived that. They were really a company that's serious about transformation and diversity. And, you could see people of different ages, different races in senior positions. So definitely that is something that has popped up for me.
Yeah, and I think
not popped up. No, go for it.
No, I was just saying, I can see Dele in the chat box is echoing what you're saying and saying that sometimes companies don't realize the weight that color brings, especially if you feel like, okay, not everyone in the company is the same race as I am. But bringing it a little bit earlier, and I know diversity isn't only a race thing. I mean, I think in South Africa, that's been our strongest focus. Globally, it's been race and gender. But I know that there has been more and more work done on making sure that job ads or job profiles and job descriptions are written in a way that is more neutral in language, so that people feel right from the first experience as a candidate or potential employee, there's an openness, there's a embracing of diversity. And again, I know this is something Alzeta's worked with quite a lot. But have you ever had that experience where you've read a job ad or a job profile and thought, oh, feel a bit uncomfortable?
I've had one experience where the job ad was in Afrikaans. And I looked at it and I immediately thought, okay, I'm definitely not the target market, for this company or this role. And immediately that said to me, okay, this company is not transformed. And I'm not saying companies should not choose or, who they want to hire. But I'm saying that, we need to, work towards being more diverse and more, and more transformed even in our jobs, in the job specs as well. So that, and I'll go to something else again. And I mentioned this, psychometrics. That's something that a lot of people overlook. I can do psychometrics. I think I come from a great background of a great school and all that, but there's people who don't come from that background, who can't do that, who don't understand, what even those questions or those psychometrics mean. A PDI individual comes from the raw areas, they cannot even begin to do that. And I haven't struggled from that because I've got the background that I have. So that was the only experience in terms of, the spec that was just, I felt like was just not for me. And I think the other one is not that I'm being an ageist, or where people will say, the specs will say 30 years of experience. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm not an ageist, but who is going to have 30 years of experience? This is a company clearly, targeting the more mature individual. And again, companies can choose whoever they want to hire. But we need to be cognizant of the fact that we need to aim towards being diverse and towards being more transformed.
No, sure. I think my question with those types of requirements are always, why 30? What skills, what experience, what competencies are you looking for that someone would have developed in 30 years? Because as you say, what it really does is it's actually a deterrent for the type of people they don't want to hire. It's often something that tries to exclude race or exclude certain age groups. So as you say, it doesn't make the company look good. It doesn't make the company look attractive. And then you have that word of mouth that spreads as well. So,
Yeah.
Dada, I think we've talked about the first, kind of your first impression in terms of a job ad or a job profile. We've talked about being invited to the interview and the consideration around that. We've talked about in the interview itself, how you can look at the values of the organization, the diversity, the panel. What about the approach or the interviewing style? Because a lot of people who I train in organizations kind of veer towards a sense where they want to or try to come across as more powerful in the interview. Sometimes it's just because they're nervous. And so, that's their reaction. And some of them even opt for a more interrogatory style rather than a more relaxed style. So again, you've been with different companies, you've seen different styles. What style or approach when you're talking to interviewers and potential employers is attractive for you or has the opposite?
What's been attractive for me is, informal, but not too informal. I don't want we're not old friends. We've just met, but not too, at the same time, not too formal, where I feel, intimidated. And treat me, treat me as a person. I've been in interviews where the panel has asked, you have kids, who are you? Who is Dada besides the professional? What do you like? What are your hobbies? And that for me says, you're interested in me as a person, not just in my skills. I'm not just the head, the head or the hands, that I've got a heart, I'm the heart as well. So that for me, has been something that has worked. I went to an interview once, which was not great. One of the questions they asked me was, right now, while we're having the interview, how many bottles or glasses of wine do you think people have had? And I'm thinking, what? How can I even, comprehend or even calculate that? And that was a very, very weird. It was an informal interview, but the line of questioning was just very strange for me. So informal, treat me as a person, engage with me, about the role, but also about me, Dada, as a person, get to know Dada.
Yes, okay. So I'm still laughing about how many glasses and bottles of wine. Yeah, I think people sometimes, speaking of assessments, maybe they aren't the company who gives you the 4-hour one. They sometimes feel like, if I just ask this one clever question, it sums up the person. So sometimes, not that it's attractive, but people do that. So yes, I think, and I do train people to be human, to be less formal, that even if you have a structured approach, which is important for fairness and consistency, come across in a conversational way, relax, and help the person feel that you are genuinely interested in what they have to say. I do have a confession to make. I'm afraid I am telling companies and interviewers not to ask you how many kids you have. And
wow. Is that because you think they're going to be prejudiced?
It's because of bias. So with the Employment Equity Act, you actually can't ask those personal questions without being influenced by the answer. Because now, I have some clients who say, if someone tells me they have kids, I am not going to hire them because they're just going to be off on sick leave. So sometimes some of them they'd like to ask those questions, but they're trying not to because they don't want to be unfair or be influenced by a personal answer. But I do think
that's actually a different perspective that says they're not asking that, not because they're not being human, but because they are being human in a different way.
Yes.
They're trying to be fair, they're trying to, to apply fairness, they're trying to, to adhere to the, the human recruitment policies of being non-biased.
Absolutely. But I think it doesn't mean they have to be robotic and stiff.
Yeah.
So it means that they can ask their questions, but then probe out of genuine interest. And as you said, it's so important to ask relevant questions. not ones that aren't relevant to the job. I mean, that would be illegal anyway. They could end up at the CCMA. They're scared of that, but yeah.
And what about the scenario-based? I mean, not scenario-based. I mean, I've had questions where, and I get asked those questions in a lot of interviews. What would you do in this particular situation, or if you were faced with this particular situation? And I'm not saying that's a bad line of questioning, but I'm just saying at that moment when you're asking me that, I'm making up the answer in my head.
Exactly. No, you're spot on, Dada. And I think that, you know, again, if we're going to use a competency-based approach, it is viewed as the most fair way to question someone in an interview, because the research shows that past behavior is your most accurate predictor of future behavior. So you do want to ask questions where the candidate is able to answer and give you a real life example, something that is relevant and something that is preferably as recent as possible.
Yes.
Be able to tell you a real story about how they handled a situation. And I know that there's people on this call who will agree with me, and even the coaches like Chantal are nodding. But I think in those situations, as soon as you ask hypothetical questions, obviously, as you say, the candidate feels uncomfortable. You usually then speak theoretically about something. There's more of a sense that I'm making this up. And in the end, it's less convincing for you as a candidate in terms of conveying your abilities to the interviewer, just because you're saying hypothetically. I mean, of course, there is perhaps sense in asking it where you want to see the route that someone would take to solve a problem. Then yes, sketch a scenario and see which approach they take. But not for saying, what would you do if you had to handle a really difficult client on the phone? Rather ask, well, yeah, have you had a recent example where you've had to handle a difficult client on the phone? How did that go? And then genuinely, and what was the outcome? Not, have you had to handle, what did you do? What was the, you know, then it's breaking that human engagement.
Yes, you see the way that you explained it, how it should be done, makes me again feel like you're genuinely interested in what I have to say, you know. And then I'm thinking of you're pointing me to something that I have actually experienced, and it's not a hypothetical question. It's, you know, a real example of something that has happened. But if you're saying, but as you say, what would you do? Then, you know, at that moment, I can't even figure it out because I'm uncomfortable. You know, I'm intimidated, I'm nervous, you know, all the other things that you've mentioned.
Well, thank you very much, Nandi, because unknowingly you're promoting my training. So I really appreciate that. But Nandi, oh no, I'm calling you Nandi. Sorry, back to Dada. Dada, at the end of an interview, how do you enjoy potential employers to end off that engagement? What is an attractive way, in your view, to kind of close that process? Yeah, in your experience.
I want to be clear as to when I'm going to get feedback. How long is this process going to take? When am I going to get feedback? And I think one of the things that we haven't addressed is salary. I also need that to be clear. You know, before that interview is over, I need to be clear what salary, or, you know, is being offered here. And when I say salary, I don't want the question that says, can we see your payslip? Because my payslip shouldn't be featuring, you know, in this interview. It should be about the company's budget. So I want to know, what's the process? Everything must be on the table. What's the process? What is the salary that is being offered here? How long is this going to take? And when can I expect feedback? I think that for me, you know, is closing the loop.
Yeah, I think there's, if we were to go onto social media and see the complaints written about and shared about recruiters or organizations, so much of it is around, I didn't get feedback. As you say, I invested all that time, that 4 hours in the assessment, the interviews, for that. And in the end, and I often have people saying to me, oh, Jane, I went for an interview. It's close to a week ago. I'm dying to know how it went. Can I follow up?
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying is so key, is so important for recruiters and for organizations to give clear kind of process on, this is how it's going to be. This is when you'll hear from me. If you haven't heard from me by this date, please connect with me. But yeah,
Yes,
people do that.
definitely. And
yeah.
And I mean, that element of feedback has completely, and I'm sorry to say this, put me off recruiters. I am very worried. I'd rather go directly to the company myself. But the times that I've worked with recruiters, that's what has been missing. That feedback element has always been missing.
No, sure. I think it's just, I do know some good recruiters where it's not. And I was actually speaking to one this morning, and she was talking about wanting to give feedback to a candidate. And what I love about her approach is she's going to be scheduling just a 5 or 10 minute either Zoom or Teams call with the candidate, so that even if they're not successful, she gives them that little bit of feedback, because
that's amazing.
I think, yeah, it's about respect. And I think,
yes.
as you said, people are people. And I've heard of people, sometimes in workshops, I've had candidates say, I felt so humiliated by an experience in an interview that I didn't have the courage to apply for another job for 2 years. And that's heartbreaking for me, because it's not just, I didn't apply for another job. It just means in their whole selves, they lost confidence. How they would have treated their family, their friends, how they would have felt when they woke up in the morning. So much is impacted by an engagement when you're at that vulnerable stage of looking for a job. So important.
And it is a very vulnerable stage.
So what has impressed you most? If you look back, and again, you don't have to mention a company name, but what is an experience that just blew you away, where they did something and you were like, wow, that's different, or that's impressive?
Well, I went through the interview process. I got the job. I got the offer, was invited for dinner with the team to, meet with the team. That for me was mind blowing. I think we went to the Fig. I mean, it's even an expensive restaurant. It was the first time I had duck meat. That was such that completely blew me away. I've not had something like that again, but that was just amazing. Also, it was a good, a good base in terms of, meeting the team and getting to know the team. A nice social environment, not the tense work environment. That was amazing.
Oh, I love that. And did you like the duck?
Yes. I loved it. And I must mention the other thing that impressed me. I went for an interview, in a previous company. And I know through the interview, I did the assessment same day, but the assessment was different. It wasn't sitting in front of the computer and doing the assessment. It was role play, and I had never done that before. It was just completely amazing. And from this role play, they could figure out how I deal, with certain situations, my demeanor, my body language. I think that was amazing. And, I got the job after that.
Yes, we're not surprised you get jobs, Dada. but I hear you, and I think something I think we've spoken about at another time is the importance of making an interview engagement interesting. So we don't want to transgress any, legal rules and regulations around being unfair or discriminatory, but important to make it fun, engaging, interesting. That also says something about the culture.
Yes.
And there's 2 more questions that I think are burning on my heart. One is, what is the worst experience you've ever had? What is something that happened where you thought, oh, I will never work for you? Is there anything you haven't mentioned?
I've already mentioned it. I mean, the company that was clearly, from my perspective, not very diverse. That was very jarring for me. I walked out of there thinking, no, this is not the place, the company that I want to work for.
Yeah. So people need to feel like I can fit in here
on
all levels.
And I'm not saying only race. I'm saying gender. I'm saying age. If I walked into an interview and it was only, white, but it was different ages, younger, that makes a difference. And also gender, it was a mix of, gender profiles. That makes a difference.
Yes. Yeah. Love that. And I see LZ has also added something more in our comments with some advice around what pronouns to use when it comes to gender in job ads. Rather than saying he, she, say they, or I've also heard of you, so that people don't feel excluded.
Yeah.
So Dada, to end off with, what keeps you where you are? I know at the beginning of this, we said you're not on the job market right now, and Sanlam would be very unhappy with me if I was doing this on the job market. But yeah, what keeps you? It's not just about attracting top talent, it's retaining, it's growing. Yeah.
It is, firstly, I don't want to, not take into account any other organization that I've worked for. I think in every organization where I've worked, I've learned something in terms of my skills and also my character. I've walked away thinking, okay, now I know what I want and what I don't want in terms of my career. I've grown in this way in terms of my character. And what keeps me where I am, I think if I told you about my boss, you'd probably want to work for him as well. I've got an amazing boss who's invested in my career, invested, in who I am. And it's not that he spoon feeds me. He doesn't spoon feed me. It's been such a steep learning curve working for him, but he doesn't throw me in the deep end and leave me there. He guides me, he mentors. And I was in a session with someone, and this person, I don't even know this person, and this person said, he values you so much. And I mean, hearing that from someone from a different team, I've never spoken to them, but they've heard about me from my boss, says a lot. And just the company as a whole, I mean, Sanlam, before I started, people would say, oh, you're not going to enjoy it because it's a white company, it's old, and one person who said, you are going to love it there, only one person. And when I joined, it is an amazing company. I literally have people falling all over themselves to help me out. It's like everyone there understands that our mandate is to achieve the goals of the company, which is Sanlam. So there's no underhandedness. We work together as a company. The executives, I had a session with the chief executive, Jane, and the session was 30 minutes. All I wanted to know from her was, how did you get where you are? How did you make the decision from moving from technical to executive? I mean, this is not job related, but it's about me. So the company, the team, my boss, I wake up every day, not only because I love my job, but because of him. He's one of the smartest people I know. He's an incredible guy. And he doesn't even have the thing of, some people feel like, you're black, you're female, I'm white, I'm threatened, you might take my job. No, he's like, what do you want to be? You want to be an executive? Let's get you there. Come, what can I do to get you there? So I think after, about 10 years of moving around and Vodacom long tenure, I said to my husband, where I am, I'm here to stay. There's no reason for me to leave. If I left, I don't have any, justifiable or good, valid reason to say I'm job hunting.
Yeah.
That's like a TED talk on my great company.
Some more free advertising for someone. But and Nomfasani, yeah, thank you that you love this retention question. So important. And I think it echoes the recruitment process highlights as well, where the things that are coming through strongest are a personal, genuine interest in someone, that two-way street, a human engagement. What's important for you? Is there an overlap? We embrace diversity. And I'm not going to just coddle you and spoon feed you, as you say. It still needs to be challenging. There needs to be growth. But it's about the person.
Yes. And can I mention that the interview process was an informal chat? I walked out of the interview knowing that my boss had just had a baby.
Yes, so and that's fine if the boss shares that. They just can't ask you that.
It was personal, it was informal. I walked away feeling like, oh my goodness, I want to work for this person.
Yes.
I want to work for this company.
But I actually, that is another point that is so important. Often interviewers feel like they need to be stiff and formal, and yes, they need to be professional, but they themselves need to model being vulnerable, being transparent, being open, and even talking about their own career journey, because that inspires the person who may want to work there to see, wow, look what you did, look how you grew. The same could happen for me. So love that. Yeah, value and respect. Yeah, thank you. So Dada, I do want to open it up to everybody else, because I know there's a lot of recruiters in this session today. I know there are coaches, I know there are recruitment marketers, I know there are managers, and I'm sure that they either have something they'd like to add. I know everybody comes with experience and ideas, or they might have additional questions that they'd like to ask. So I really do want to ask anyone who wants to add something, please do unmute yourself. If you feel like, oh no, I don't want to say something, I'd rather type it in the chat box, please feel free to do that.